Hello there, welcome to Six Tackles with Gus, counting down to round 4 of season 2022. I'm Matthew Thompson. With me is Phil Gould, who had the very important job of charging Will Smith to front the judiciary for his slap on Chris Rock at the Oscars. What did you come up with, Gus?
Deliberate and grade 5 stupidity.
Grade 5?
Grade 5 stupidity.
Yeah.
Was that okay?
Yeah, I'm not convinced it was real yet. Are you?
It was real. I think it was real. I've barred him from the next 3 Oscars.
3 years. Sounds fair to me.
Got 3 Oscars. He's young enough. He'll be back.
How many Logies did you go to? Ever been?
Logies?
Yeah.
Never.
Never went?
No.
Never inclined?
No, I'm not in the Logie class, mate.
I reckon it'd be.
I left that up to the.
Reckon it'd
the
be an
big
awful
boys.
night. Do you reckon I reckon it'd be a horrible night. Do you reckon? I reckon it'd be.
If you're a people watcher, I reckon it'd be a great night.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, yeah.
Seeing what they get up to, some of the stories I've heard.
Yeah.
Anyway, what happens at the Logies stays at the Logies.
Indeed. On the podcast today, now we've done the Ask Gus on Instagram and Twitter, and it has gone off. We've got so many questions, and we've got some very insightful ones. So I'm going to smatter them throughout the program. Get Gus to answer them. I think there's some very poignant questions here as well. We'll take a little trip down memory lane with some vintage audio of a moment in Gus's career. We'll look at the NRLW semi-finals. We'll preview round 4. We've got 6 tackle trivia, which is my favourite question we have done just yet so far in the season. 6 weeks of Mitch Barnett. Fair enough?
Yeah, I think so. It was a funny one because we just don't see that anymore, do we? That type of incident. I can't imagine that if he hit him really hard, he didn't break his jaw. And had he broken his jaw, what the reaction might have been. So I can only think it was a bit of a nudge, but it was just a silly thing to do. I don't know whether it was impulse or I don't know what made him raise his arm like that and collect the bloke on the chin. But anyway, I think 6 weeks is enough. It's arbitrary. People will say whatever they like, but I think 6 weeks is enough to say the judiciary's done its job and he's learned his lesson and we can get him back to playing and hopefully he never does it again. I can't imagine anyone doing that again. You never see that anymore, do you?
No. It's weird.
Anyway, it was just enough.
Yeah. So, Gus, you know how we have cameras everywhere and we slow everything down to a millimetre of its life on the field and we look at the bunker 1,000 times and stuff. How do we miss Nelson Asofa-Solomona's stiff arm to the back of Makatoa's head?
Well, they didn't miss it. They replayed it a number of times.
But during the game, how do you miss that?
Well, I don't know. Look, it's unfair to ask me that because the Bulldogs are playing the Storm this week, so whatever I say there, people are going to say I'm biased.
All right, well,
but
in general terms,
I think the commentary has been fairly accurate with what's happened, and the league's admitted that it was probably an error, and they've got to admit that it's an error because if you made that the standard going forward, then you're back in dangerous territory, aren't you? But it's just one of those little anomalies. Someone there in the bunker and someone in the match review committee decided that that's what it was worth. It was a fine. I think he can consider himself fortunate, but move on. That's the way it goes. The league have had to admit that it was probably the wrong penalty because they don't want that being used in evidence in other people's cases and saying, well, why are you charging me? We had blokes sent from the field for sin bins in the first couple of weeks for innocuous contacts, if they made contact.
I think that's the point I'm making, Gus, is that we find every tiny minuscule thing within a game, yet you see a bloke who clocks someone in the back of the head who should have at least gone to the sin bin and it goes unchecked. Yeah. I find it very weird.
Yeah, well, you'll have to ask those that were in charge. Not only has it been weird once, it was weird twice. It was weird that it wasn't picked up at the game and dealt with, and it's weird that then having been picked up at the game, that it wasn't dealt with from a match review committee perspective.
Yeah.
Had that been, Victor Radley or Jared Hargreaves or Jack Hetherington or, Jaden Sewer or some of those other players, I just wonder what the reaction might have been.
Yeah, fair enough. Eventful game, that one. Good game, actually. Parramatta versus Melbourne. Sat here last week, and Gus was pretty confident about that game, actually.
I think Parramatta are certainties. I think they'll go down there and win this week.
Certainties? Wow.
Is that what I said?
I love that. I love that.
Replay the tape. I think Parramatta are certainties.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Never in doubt.
I hope you sent Blue Bet broke. Did you?
Well, we've had people around the country mortgaging their houses and wagering their kids' education funds, and they've all come up trumps, and it was Golden Point.
Yeah. No, they were good, Parramatta, and really hung in there. Melbourne Storm looked like they had a beaten a couple of times, and they just kept coming back. Parramatta, I knew they would. They're the sort of team that go to Melbourne, and why they've had success against Melbourne. I think a lot of teams are beaten against Melbourne before they start, where Parramatta are not. Parramatta fancy themselves. Sometimes that comes against Parramatta too, but it certainly serves them well when they play the big sides. And they were unlucky not to feature in a grand final last year. I mean, they went within 2 points of beating the Panthers, and had Reid Marnia played, they're of the opinion that could have made up the difference. And I think this year they'll play with a lot of hunger. They're coming off a loss the week before, which I think embarrassed them a little bit. And although the Sharks made the form look really good, didn't they? But I just had a feeling, and I think Melbourne are still sorting a few little issues out. Mind you, they never lose 2 in a row at home, and look what happens this week.
Yeah, well, you guys are going okay. Got to be in it to win it. After 3 weeks, Gus, the biggest margin in terms of games played so far was on Sunday. Cowboys 38 over the Broncos 12, 26 points. Biggest margin in a game after 3 weeks of the season, which is in stark contrast to some of the blowouts we saw last year.
Yeah, probably exacerbated by the fact a lot of those tries came from kicks, so they're sort of speculative at the back end. But Cowboys were far too good from the Broncos. Broncos were very disappointing on the weekend, given what they'd showed on the first couple of rounds, and maybe they took them a little bit lightly, or maybe they were reading their own press a little bit. I don't know, but they just didn't come up anywhere near as well as they had. And the Cowboys, who'd had a big win the week before, certainly backed that up against their arch rivals and were far too good for them. There are a couple of things that I said after round one. Round one, we have 8 winners and 8 losers. And I think I said on this podcast, the fans of those 8 teams that lost won't have to wait long until they win. Well, within 2 weeks, they've pretty much all won, other than the West Tigers, who could have easily won their game on the weekend. And I said the competition's a lot closer than it was. I'm not doubting the fact that the top teams are still the top teams and they're the ones to beat, but I think the margin between them and the next rung of teams that are going to be around that top 8, and then you've got these teams down the bottom that are fighting to get out of the cellar, albeit they've been playing each other in the first couple of weeks, wrestling for a bit of form there. But I think the competition's much closer. I think the rule change around 6 agains inside your own 40 has steadied the game up to a more manageable level. And you've got to understand too that the last time we've made rule changes in 2020 and 2021, we made them mid-season. All right. We sort of knew what it was in the off-season. I think the coaches have had a chance to now train for it through a full off-season. I mentioned the fact that there was no rep football last year. We didn't go to the World Cup. We didn't have football at the end of the season. All the players have had a good break, which they need. They need it every 3 or 4 years. You just need that off-season off. I know, content is king and we need to be playing representative fixtures, but sometimes the players' bodies just need a break. It's as simple as that. And I think for a lot of them it's been very beneficial, and it's been beneficial for the clubs with preparation and why we're seeing teams go a little bit better. We're still in our game lacking experience depth or developed depth because COVID has knocked out our development grades for the last couple of years, and thankfully now they're starting to get some football, and hopefully that improves over the next couple of seasons. But I don't think we're going to see much difference in margins. Hopefully, the good sides will always beat a bad side by a good score, and sometimes you get beaten by 30 and 40, and it's not really reflective of your effort. Where last year we had some horrific score lines. We had 70 and 80 points being scored in games, and 60 nils and all sorts of things. I don't think we're going to see that.
The point I was trying to make there, that 26-point margin.
Yeah.
It being the biggest margin so far after 3 weeks shows that there has been a contraction.
Oh, no doubt.
Competitive.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think I said it last week, in the figures that we do on players and the ratings we do and their contribution levels, you can see that it's come back seriously. Their own individual contributions with metres made and post-contact metres and different things, number of passes, number of runs. Number of tackle breaks, number of missed tackles, number of line breaks, number of try assists. So all those things have narrowed right back from individual performances because we've actually done something a little bit for the defence this time. And you're seeing some close score lines.
Jeff Browers, our first question E for Gus. Do you think the Broncos have been pretenders in their first two games, given the flogging by the Cowboys on Sunday? Are they on a quick, slippery slope, or can they bounce back?
I think they'll bounce back. I don't think you can write any team off after 1 week. I was pretty impressed with their first couple of weeks. Look, I'm not saying they're going to bounce out of the cellar and be a top 8 team, and I've never said that even in the pre-season sort of summary. But they will certainly be a better team than they were last year. I think everyone will be a better team than they were last year. I don't know if the positions on the ladder will change all that much, but everyone will improve incrementally, and I think the gaps are narrowing a little bit. But I wouldn't be writing the Broncos off as pretenders. And where did you expect them to finish anyway? You're suggesting the Broncos pre-season people were giving them a chance of winning the premiership or being a top 4 team? I didn't. I don't think they're at that level. I think, somewhere between 7th and 10th would be a marvellous season for them. So I'm not calling the pretenders on that. I think that's very achievable for them.
Price Walsh.
You don't believe me?
Me?
You didn't seem too impressed with that.
That's a good answer.
Eh?
No, it's just.
Oh, now you're rating answers now, are you?
It's Jeff's question. It wasn't my question.
Okay.
Hey, I got an interesting one here from Price Walsh. I'm not sure how comfortable you'll be with answering this, but I'll ask you, and you can answer as you will. Are the bottom teams refereed differently to the top sides?
In what respect? And let me say this, that I know a coach from a bottom team who spoke to Graham Annesley at the league one time and said, why do we keep getting the rough end of the pineapple here, or why are we penalised for things, we might be doing it wrong, but they're doing it wrong too, and we're not getting penalties on the other side of the thing. So, and Graham Annesley actually admitted that there is a natural bias from the referee sometimes with top sides and bottom sides about their discipline and those types of things. Bias is probably the wrong word, but that's the word he used. There's an intrinsic bias around the quality of team that you're sort of refereeing, and you tend to be a little bit nitpicky with the lower sides as they're trying to drag the top sides back or slow the play down or get the game to play at their level. So there is he used the word bias, but he doesn't mean I'm biased in the refereeing. It's what you're looking for.
Preconceived view.
Preconceived view. And there's always been a view with the referees. Like they used to say it all the time. We'd have, 20, 25, 30 penalties in games leading up to Origin. Then we'd get to Origin and we'd have 6 penalties.
Yes.
And it was a far better game. And their excuse was, it's easier to referee the top players. They don't break the rules. Well, rubbish. They do. Everyone's out there trying to break the rules and force an advantage for themselves. So I think that somewhere there is a preconception or something that's put into them that the top players know how to manage the game and do what they're doing, and other players who are struggling to keep up are deliberately trying to breach the rules to get an advantage. So that's coming from the top bloke. Now it feels like it if you're a bottom side. It doesn't feel like it if you're a top side. But that's just how it feels. That if you're supporting one of the bottom teams, you wonder why you get the rough end of the pineapple, or a bunker decision doesn't go your way, or they seem to be getting penalised for things. And the other side, it's not the puns you give away penalties for. It's the ones you don't get. It's the ones where you see the same thing being done by the opposition, and you don't seem to be getting the penalties for those. Graham
so
Ellis,
how do you turn that around?
You then become a top side. You need to learn to win. You need to learn to control your discipline. At the end of the day, it's in your hands. You can do it. You can control your discipline. And the top sides too know that, like if Panthers are playing Melbourne in the grand final or a final or something like that, or Parramatta's playing the Panthers, or, Souths are playing Melbourne or what have you, they know that penalties are extremely punishing to them in the course of a game. You want to trade for kick and cycle for cycle and wear them down and earn everything that you get. So, the Melbourne Storm are really good. Whilst they push the envelope on everything, they will jump off at other times. So they're deliberately trying not to give away penalties at some times, where the lesser sides and lesser players probably struggle to hold on in the pace of the game, or feel as though they've got to grab a leg or grab a jersey or do something or run someone off the ball for fear that something might happen, where the better players tend to be a little bit more composed. So I can understand where the referees get that. It's not a deliberate thing, but it's just in their mentality sometimes with the better sides. And the better sides are more relaxed and more disciplined. And are they more disciplined because they're better, or are they better because they're more disciplined? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? I see a lot of a lot of teams are at the bottom because their discipline is poor. It's discipline that hurts them. You know, they'll say, we're a bottom side, we get penalised too heavily. Well, that might be the case, but you're making a lot of mistakes too. So you need to look at those rather than the referee and the officiating or what you perceive to be a bias in the refereeing. You need to address that yourself. And when you start to address that, it's funny, your results start to improve. But that comes with better mentality and better discipline. And, you know, and that's, you know, what you do on the field is a reflection of the way you live your life. If you cut corners and cheat and, you know, do things your own way off the field, chances are that's what you'll take onto the field. You can't suddenly become disciplined on the field if you're disciplined off the field, if you're not disciplined at training, if you're not, you know, we had a big thing about, you know, touch the line. You must touch them, not an inch short is no good. An inch over the line is no good. You know, you've got to be very deliberate in the way you train and the mentality you put into your players. And it comes to cleaning up your area around your locker. It comes to the way you treat your gymnasium. It's the way you treat people who walk into the establishment. It's the way you treat people, members and kids when you go to functions and kids when you go to clinics. And, you know, to be a professional footballer, that discipline and that role you play it's got to be all part of your life. You just can't suddenly bring it out under pressure on game day and say, well, today I'll be disciplined if you're not disciplined in your normal life. That's the development. That's the culture. You know, you've got to build that into them from 15, 16 years of age and build it into your club over a period of time. You know, culture in a club is generational. You just can't suddenly teach an old dog new tricks if he's been undisciplined all his life or he's undisciplined off the field. And how often do we see that?
Does that extend to the children cleaning their bedroom and putting their dirty dishes in the sink?
100%.
Could you have a word to mine?
100%. Well, I don't think they're going to be NRL players, Matt, if they're going to not clean their dishes.
Not the way their discipline's going, no.
No, they're not going to be NRL players unless they can do the dishes.
Well, if Uncle Gus gives them a call, though, it might shake it.
Well, I'm looking at them down the camera now, and I'm saying, clean the dishes, clean your bedroom, all right? Put the gear away, no toys on the floor, all that sort of thing.
Listen.
Put your clothes away. Put your dirty washing in the basket. Do something for your mum. Help her hang out the clothes.
What about Dad?
Eh?
What about do something for Dad?
Dad's a slob. Don't do what he does. Don't follow your dad.
Well, maybe you can give him driving lessons at some stage because along with speaking with you of Wednesday, I get to do Friday and the 8th. And your favourite former footballer, Brad Fittler, told a very funny story last week about Uncle Gus getting behind the wheel.
You know, sometimes I listen to Brad Fittler. And I think, who the hell coached you when you're younger? The stuff that comes out of his mouth. And then I realised that most of it was me. So I failed miserably.
And Gus used to drive us on like a 20-seater...
Gus drove?
Gus was driving on a 20-seater van. So we're late for the game. We're getting dressed in the van. He's doing Pittwater Road at 80 k's on the inside lane. And we're like getting thrown around the back, putting our gear on. We get out. So we get there, I reckon, 30 minutes before the game, 30, 40 minutes. So we're dressed, straight in the sheds. Out we go. Win.
You won?
Yeah, we won.
Why is Gus driving?
He's always drivers.
What? That's bizarre.
I don't know if he had a licence. Those vans, those little 18-seaters or whatever, they were so much fun.
My question, as I asked during that, is why were you driving the bus?
Because it was so much fun. It was so much fun. That was my...
Did you insist on driving the bus?
Yeah, I used to do it a lot. I used to hire a bus and take my team to the footy.
I love the things we find out in this job.
Back in the old days. The first time I did it was 1988. My first year of coaching, I was coaching the Bulldogs, and we were going down to play the Canberra Raiders in Canberra. And it was a top-of-the-table clash. We ended up playing them in the major semi-final later that year. We went on to win the premiership, but they were flying pretty high at the time, and it was about that stage of the season where we either had, were we a contender or a pretender? You know, we had to get it done. So I asked them to take the week off work because everyone had jobs in those days, and we trained a few days, and then I put them all on the minibus and took them down to Canberra, down to Queanbeyan the night. It was played at the old Seaford Oval there at Queanbeyan, and we drove the bus down on the Saturday afternoon and stopped at Goulburn and had a little bit of lunch, and then we went down to Canberra and had a bit of dinner that night, and woke up the next morning and they were all in the same bedroom watching TV together. And I was big on togetherness and spirit, and it's probably a thing that's overlooked a little bit in the modern game, and we tend to get very technical and strategic, and players tend to look after their own brand. And I think I'm still a big believer in spirit and togetherness and camaraderie and all that sort of thing. So giving them something special was my mentality around Origin coaching and everything as well. I tried to make it a little bit different at times, and not just about the football, but about being mates and doing something together and taking on a challenge. And we went down to Canberra and we beat them, and from that moment we were always going to win the premiership. I felt it was just one of those weekends. But I drove the bus. I had a Class 3 licence, I think it was called back in the day, and I'd hire a mini bus from Hertz and stick them all in the back, and we'd drive down to Goulburn on the Saturday afternoon. I played bookmaker. They were all betting with me in the
now we're getting to the
bus
crux
going
of the
down
matter.
there.
Yeah.
I'd have to give them their money back later because they were terrible punters. But yeah, it was just a really enjoyable way to do it. And then they looked forward to it. So every time they knew that I turned up with the bus and we're going on the bus, that this was a big day, and that's what we had to do. And there were a number of examples of that over the year. The one he was referring to was in 1991. And we were playing Manly at Brookvale. It might have been a Monday night game. We were still playing Monday nights in those games. Might have been a deferred game. I can't remember. It's a long way from Penrith to Brookvale.
Especially in 1991.
Yeah, and we got peak hour traffic and all sorts of things. And I said, boys, we're going to cut it fine. You better start getting ready. We'll just hit and run here. We'll jump out, beat them, and then go home. And that's exactly what we did.
We're not sure if we're going to get there on time.
Eh?
We're not sure if
Well,
we're going to arrive on time.
They can't start without you. They can kick off and score one try, but then
It's
they've got
Phil
to
Gould here. We're running 10 minutes late.
Yeah. Of course, years
that's
later we
great.
had rabbits. We were running late with rabbits, and we had to hold the kick up for rabbits. No, but we were always going to get there, but we had a bit of fun with it.
Did you have a beer on the way home? Was that part of the fun in the minibus?
Absolutely. Yes.
Great stuff.
I loved all that.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
I won't tell you how I got my Class 3 licence. I don't want to.
No, we might leave that one out. All right, now I'm very excited about 6 tackle trivia this week.
Right.
In fact, I'm so excited I texted Gus last night to tell him I'm excited. This question relates to someone who is probably your favourite sports person, I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Of the 15 golf majors that Tiger Woods has won,
Yep.
this is a 2-stage question, okay? Of the 15 majors Tiger Woods has won, how many has he won in a playoff, and who did he beat? You can have some thinking time.
Yep.
We'll take a little break, and on the other side, it's Tiger time. Of the 15 golf majors the great Tiger Woods has won, how many did he win in a playoff, and who did he beat?
Well, I think he won one in. I think he won one in a playoff that you're talking about. I think he beat a bloke called May, was it? Might have been a US Open or a US PGA.
Good start.
And it was a really good, it was a really tight battle. That May played really good that day, and Tiger had to pull out all stops to beat him. And I think they played a 4-hole playoff, but he birdied the first hole. I think it was a cumulative score over 4 holes, and I think he birdied the first hole and then held him off and won. So that's one I remember.
Bob May. 2000 PGA Championship.
PGA Championship, there you go. So I don't know. I remember him winning a playoff where they had to turn up the next morning and they had to play a play through, and he hit it to an inch. Was that a major?
I think it is. I think it's the one you're thinking of.
Yeah, he actually, it was a par 3 and the green was tucked way over on the right, and he just wanted to hit it to the middle of the green, and he actually pushed it a little bit and it went to an inch and was over virtually there. He had a 1 inch putt. The bloke was off the green. But
all right. Well, there's 2 he's won majors in playoffs.
They were playoffs, were they?
Yeah.
You mean there's more?
There's one more.
One more in a playoff. Don't think it was a British Open. Wasn't a Masters.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Masters? Was it Masters? Was it? Who did he beat in the playoff in the Masters? Masters.
I'll give you the year and see if you can come up with it. 2005.
Oh God. 2005. Masters playoff. No. 2005. That would have been. I can see the bloke's face. I can't remember his name. Was that the year he chipped in on the 16th.
I haven't gone that far into my research.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the bloke's name. I can't think of the fella's name.
What can I, he's an American.
Yeah, I know he's American. I can see his face. I can't think of his name. What's his name? He hasn't been around for a while.
Yeah, hasn't been around for a while.
Um,
In fact, both of them are Americans. The 05 Masters and the 08 US Open.
yeah. Okay.
No,
Yeah, I got the May one.
Chris
And
DeMarco.
Chris DeMarco, that was him. And he was the bloke. He was the bloke on the 16th where Tiger chipped in. Remember that amazing chip where he chipped in from the 16th? Chris DeMarco was playing with him on that day. I think that was the day he might have won in the playoff.
Yeah, that was the play.
Yeah.
And you know how Dwayne Johnson's known as the Rock.
Yeah.
2008 US Open. Think about the Rock.
Rocco Mediate.
Correct.
Well, there was an 18-hole playoff. It wasn't a sudden death. Well, you did too.
Well, it's a
because
playoff.
It went to the 19th hole of the 18-hole playoff. They played 18 holes.
Was it playoff and a playoff?
Yeah, it was a playoff and a playoff.
Wow.
Yeah, the US Open is an 18-hole playoff. You come back the next day.
That's
And
right.
Tiger had to sink a 15-foot putt on the 18th hole. He played with a broken leg on the last day.
I know.
Or for the last 2 days of the tournament. If you haven't seen it, go on YouTube and look at the epic contest between Tiger and Rocco Mediate. It's wonderfully produced. You know, they do a lot of great stuff over there in the American sports and that. But it's the best 40 minutes of television you'll ever watch. And they're interviewing Tiger, they're interviewing his caddy, Steve Williams, and they're interviewing Rocco. And Rocco's outstanding all the way
He's
through
good
it.
talent, isn't he?
He's great talent. There's one part there where they're in the playoff and Rocco Mediate's walking up the fairway and Johnny Miller, the great commentator on American Golf, he said Rocco looks like the bloke who cleans Tiger's pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Rocco Mediate.
I'm going to watch that this Sabo.
And they turned up for the playoff. You know how Tiger wears red on a Sunday with the red and black, you know. So they played on Sunday and it was a playoff and Tiger had to sink a 15-foot putt to draw level to send it to an 18-hole playoff the next day.
Just a lazy 15-footer.
And when they turn up to play the next day, here's Rocco Mediate with black and red. He's got a red shirt on the black thing. And Tiger... And Rocco said, well, I didn't know he wore red on Mondays. I knew he read on Sundays. He said, I read red on Mondays.
That's good.
It's great television. You've got to watch it. And there's another one the on YouTube, the perfect tournament. He won a Pebble Beach. He won a US Open at Pebble Beach by 15 or 16 shots.
Yeah, I was having a look at that last night. So he won...
But they said it was the most perfect week of golf they've ever seen.
US Open 2000 Pebble Beach, 15 shots. And then, it's actually unfathomable. And the 97 Masters, which is his first Masters, he won by 12.
Yeah.
Why am I asking you about Tiger Woods, Gus?
Because you think he's going to play this week.
He's going to play the Masters.
Yeah.
He's just had a practice round at Augusta
Yeah.
overnight. How about that?
Yeah.
What a story.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think the biggest test would whether he could walk the 4 days. They keep telling us how hilly and how demanding it is at the Masters. It doesn't. The TV doesn't do it justice when you see it live. And it's my goal one day to go to the Masters. I'd love to go and just look at the course, but they say it's very, very hilly, so it would be a hard walk for a bloke who hasn't, been doing that. And that's. But he was apparently there this morning with his son, hitting balls on the range, and went and played a practice round.
Played 18 holes.
And I follow a lot of the US golf commentators, and they're all pretty close to the action over there, and they all know his caddy really well. And his caddy went down there for this practice round that he had. They said he wouldn't be coming down just to walk around in the practice round. He'd be coming down to look at the course and get ready to play. So hopefully it happens. I guess a couple of practice rounds and a few walk-arounds will let him know whether or not he's ready to go.
It's a great story. I mean, we thought his career was finished when he had that car accident, but not only...
We've thought his career was finished a number of times. That's another great YouTube clip. They do a thing, they call it the greatest comeback. Have a look at when he slumped, after all he had all his turmoil and all that sort of thing, when he slumped out of the world rankings and couldn't win anything, and listen to the commentary. We don't hear it here in Australia. Listen to the commentary in America where all the experts said, we'll never win again, can't beat anybody, he's finished.
Yeah.
Never play competitive golf again, and all these sort of things. And they actually play it to him, and he sits there and he listens to the reaction. And then they go to that day where he won. When he finally won another tournament, and the swarms of people that followed. It was one of the great sporting moments I've ever seen. This is not a golfing podcast. We've just bored everybody now.
No, but it's about sport and competition, and he is your favourite sport.
Well, I actually highlighted it on 100% Footy. I said, sport is about champions. sport is about champions. It's not about governance and all these types of people. Don't cheer for that. People don't cheer for the national body and all that. They cheer for champions. That's what sells your sport. It doesn't matter if it's Winx or in racing and all that stuff, but champions. You know, your Michael Jordans and your LeBron James, champions. Tom Brady's, champions. It's the champions that sell your sport. And I got a real good taste of that when I went to America in the early 90s, you know, going to sporting franchises. I went to the LA Rams. They were in LA at the time. They still are now. I think they won it this year, didn't they? Phoenix Suns basketball. I went to UCLA College. I went to San Francisco 49ers. And it was around the time that Magic Johnson had gone positive for AIDS back then. Man, it was a really big deal back then. And we sort of said, well, you know, who's going to be the face of basketball? And they said, we'll find one, because that's what drives the game. We'll find one. We'll make someone else the face of the game. And that's what they did. And it's over there, they really sell the individuals. It's a great story. The fella who actually took over the NBA at the late 70s, early 80s, talked about profiling and promoting the individuals, the players, and making them the stars of the show, and how it changed the face of sporting franchise and sporting codes over there in America. It's a really interesting study in promotion of your sport, where we tend to promote. Anyway, don't get me into that.
I've forgotten. He's got a Tiger Woods story.
What's that?
You could have played with it. You told us last week. That's the whole reason we're doing this. So you brushed him.
Well, yeah, it's a long story. I don't know if I can tell it. Can I? I don't know.
Have you got an abridged version, or do we want to?
Well, it's
You
not,
know what?
It's not a long story, but it involves a couple of mates, and I don't know whether I should be.
Okay.
But, you know, it's. I'll tell a little bit of it. So I got. Back when we were campaigning to have a new commission formed we wanted the commission formed for a couple of reasons. One was to remove media ownership from the game, which was bad for the game, and to have one governing body in the country, to get rid of the proliferation of leagues and governing bodies we had in the country. We still have those at the moment, but at least now they're controlled through funding. And we were looking for people to go on the commission. It was very hard to convince those people that were making the decisions there was one that we really wanted. It was a bloke called Gary Pemberton, who was he named Gary Pemberton. He used to run Qantas and Sky Racing and different things, and he was one that we really wanted. But they were taking so long to agree to this commission and to agree to the change in the constitution to make the commission possible. That Gary had decided that, you know, it's taking too long, and you know, it was so sad that he didn't stay for all that long. But I'll tell you the reasons for that one day. But anyway, he decided that, no, I'm just going to retire. And he was living on the Gold Coast, and Michael Searle, who was in charge of the Gold Coast Titans, was close to him. And I said, Michael, he can't pull out. He said, no. He said, well, I'll come up and have dinner with him. I've got to convince him. So I'd arranged to go up and meet with Gary Pemberton just to convince him to stay on track, and that we desperately needed him for the commission. And, you know, he was the one that we wanted, and he did great work in the first couple of years, and he got off it for certain reasons. But I had to go up there and convince him just to stay solid and to stick with it. And anyway, as luck would have it, that night I got a phone call from a good friend, said that come to Melbourne tomorrow. It was James Packer actually, and said, we've got Tiger Woods running a clinic for some Crown members, and we're going to go and play 18 holes with him in the morning.
Oh.
And I said, I can't come.
Oh,
He said,
my
what do you mean
God.
you can't come? I said, it's Tiger Woods. I said, I can't. I've got to go to the Gold Coast. He said, what for? So I got to go and convince this bloke. He said, don't do that. He said, come down to Melbourne and play with Tiger Woods. And I said, I can't. I've made a commitment. I've got to go. He said, you're mad. He said, you've got to come down. I said, I can't. And then he offered to send his jet up to pick me up at 2 o'clock in the morning to come back down to Melbourne. I said, no, don't do that. I'm not going to do that. I said, I've got... Blow it off, he said. Blow it off. Come down and play golf with Tiger. And Tiger at the moment, that's during his period where he was sort of on the outer end. But
You might have beat him.
no, I wouldn't have beaten him. So as it turned out, I got up there and we're having dinner at Moo Moo's at the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
You know, the Moo Moo's, you know, we're sitting there and I'm talking to him. And lovely man, Gary. I learned a lot off him too. And he really helped me a lot in my early days at Panthers. And I used to get a lot of advice from him. But he's sitting there and it's taking too long, and I don't know how good it's going to be, and I don't know who else is going to be on it, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it sort of got to the point where I wasn't going that well. I said, listen, Gary, I've given up a game of golf with Tiger Woods today.
Well, you say bullshit.
I've come all the way to see you. I've given up a chance to play with Tiger Woods. And he went, oh, well, I better go on the commission there. He said, funny story, isn't it?
Well, if anyone doubts Phil Gould's commitment to rugby league, there you have it.
I missed out on a chance to play with Tiger. Can we tell that story? We're allowed to tell that story?
Yeah. Would you had a $50 a hole, $100 a hole with Tiger?
We'll have to cut it out, I think.
That's a good one. I love that. Oh, dear. Well, look, you've got 6 tackles with Gus, and next week we're introducing 18 holes with Gus.
People would never know, would they?
we need to do a golf podcast.
I haven't played for years. I've had 2 back surgeries. I loved it. I used to play a lot.
I know. You keep threatening to play with me, and you never
You know what I did do? It was always my goal in life. My goal in life was to get a membership at the Australian Golf Club. My father was a really great player, and he urged me as a kid to play it, but I was all football and cricket. That's all I wanted to do. But then when I gave up playing, I needed something competitive to do, and I got into it then, And I got down to 2 or 3 handicap, and I used to play very, very regularly. And it was always my goal in life to get a membership at the Australian Golf Club, which I did in 2011, the week that I started at Panthers. So I was living in the Sutherland Shire and going out to Panthers 6 days a week and spending 16 hours a day out there. You know how many games of golf I played in the next 8 or 9 years? 0. Never visited the Australian Golf Club once, so I ended up I let the membership go. I had a couple of back surgeries and I haven't really played since. But I loved my golf. It's the greatest game in the world, bar none.
Yeah.
Rugby league aside, but the greatest individual sport you could ever play.
How about that? Tiger, I know you're a fan, and I know you're a regular listener. All the best at Augusta, and this is the man that brushed you.
Well,
He wasn't happy because it was a 3-ball at the end. They couldn't find another player.
Every professional golfer today owes their living to the likes of Tiger Woods, who have created, the well from which they now drink, and what sports rights are worth and broadcast rights. But if he's to play in the Masters next week, as they're all suspecting, you can imagine the viewership, you can imagine the crowds and the support and the news stories, and every other golfer on the planet will benefit from them. And they'll all be cheering for him. That day when he won his first tournament, after all those setbacks that he had and back operation, he had 4 or 5 back operations, and they all said he wouldn't play again, that he'd never win again. And when he won that tournament, the feedback from all the other golfers, they were all sort of cheering for him. So he's not only the greatest of all time, and you can argue that with Jack Nicklaus, but different eras, but he is single-handedly the one who I think has made the game what it is today, and all the golfers really appreciated it. And a lot of these young golfers we see on the world stage today, you ask them and their hero is Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
They saw him. There's a great ad that I saw, one of the greatest ads I've ever seen, about Tiger Woods, and it's sort of showing Tiger Woods, and it's showing a young boy in Ireland in his lounge room at 2 years of age swinging a golf club, watching Tiger on the TV. And it goes through Tiger's career, and it goes through this young kid's career as he comes along. It was about Rory McIlroy. And Rory actually played with him on the day that he won that first tournament after he came back. We haven't talked any football today, have we?
That's it.
Tiger Woods, planes to the Gold Coast.
Oh yeah, I'll be getting up to watch him if he plays in the Masters.
I won't miss. I'll be working on no sleep for the Masters.
NRLW. Ladies and gentlemen.
Something's happened. Why am I getting all these missed calls from player managers? Something's happened today. Okay, go on.
Trying to move a few around, are you? Double header of semi-finals at Leichhardt Oval on Sunday. If you are somewhere in the vicinity and able to get there, I would urge you to go. It will be great theatre. Dragons versus Titans, 2 versus 3. That's at midday. Followed by Broncos versus Roosters, 1 versus 4, 1:45. If you can't get there, you'll see it all on 9 in the lead into our Sunday afternoon clash between Melbourne and the Bulldogs.
Mm-hmm.
So the Dragons have knocked off Brisbane so far in the comp. But I really like this Titans team. They're a good attacking side, and then, of course, the Broncos are heavily favoured to beat the
particularly for their
Roosters.
first year in. They've got a lot of talented girls in that side. That's going to be a nervous game for the Dragons. I can see the Titans. I think the Broncos will be too good for the Roosters, and I think the Broncos will be too good for the winner of the other side, other semi-final. But Titans and Dragons, that'll be a really close game, I reckon.
Yep. So make sure you watch us here on 9, and if you can duck down and have a look, it's well worth it. Round 4 of season 2022. Gus is just trading a few players around here during the podcast. There you go.
I hope
if you're a Bulldog, you should be very nervous if you're listening to this.
Hope there's no drama.
Thursday night footy on the Gold Coast. Titans versus the Tigers. Jermaine Asako is going to play his first game as a Titan at fullback. He's taken the place of Jaden Campbell. And for the Tigers, well, you want to win. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, they certainly do. Titans I saw some remarkable stat this week about the number of times that they've scored more than 20 points and been beaten, and the number of times they've held big leads at half time and been beaten. And they had the Canberra Raiders down, 22-0 last week, and then never fired a shot in the second half at all.
Not one.
So it's something that they need to address. They've obviously got a lot of points in them, but I think more than any other team, they score. The number of times they've scored more than 20 points and been beaten in games is incredible when compared to others. So it's something they really need to fix. They should have too many points in them for the West Tigers, though, and I would expect them to win.
Due to be an interesting podcast when they're 0-4 next week, the West Tigers. Early game Friday, Sharks versus Knights. Kalen Ponga's back for Newcastle, but as we mentioned, Mitch Barnett's out. They've put Brodie Jones up into the starting team in the back row. And, well, Gus, it's going to be pouring rain in the Shire for Aidan Tolman's 300th NRL game. They played the pouring rain last week, the Sharks, and they played dry weather football. They were quite brilliant.
Serious team. And Nicho Hynes, serious player. What a wonderfully improved player he is, and we're learning more and more about him. I guess at Melbourne, you're wondering whether or not that's the effect of playing with so many champion players and in a champion team with a champion coach, and will players perform when they come out of that environment and go elsewhere? Well, Nicho Hynes is a player that now looks even better. That he seems to be the main man at the Sharks. He's not playing second fiddle to anyone, and he's got an extraordinary skill set. He's got a wonderful... I don't know how he does it. He doesn't look like he's moving quick, but he's thinking quick, and his hands are quick. And the other great attribute he's got, I pointed out on 100% footy the other night, is that he's got very quick hands, not in and out of his hands, but he can carry the ball and look like he's not going to pass, and then he knows exactly the right time to pass to give the man that he passes it to the chance to pass again. You see a lot of halfbacks who don't give time, and he virtually forces the man outside him to make a play himself rather than trying to do it himself. We see a lot of halves that try to throw the absolute pass, the long ball to the winger, or try and put someone through a hole, or try and squeeze a back rower through a hole on the edge of the ruck, or sell them dumps or whatever they do with them. They're trying to do the absolute. Nicho Hynes is wonderful at providing the opportunity, but enough time and space for the playmaker outside him to take another play. And I think that helped Moylan and other players that he played with the other night. I thought it was a really polished performance. They're a serious team, the Sharks, and they'll be beating the Knights.
Oh, please don't think I'm comparing them, but Jonathan Thurston could play fast and think slow, couldn't he?
Yeah, different sort of players, very different sort of players, but no less effect on the way their teams are going at the moment. He's a serious player, Nicho Hynes. What he's doing at the moment is Origin class. I don't know where you fit him into an Origin side, but he could easily be a great acquisition off the bench.
Might have tipped him to win the Dally M at the start of the year too, Gus.
Did you? He's going to have to catch Yowie.
Yeah. Well, Yowie is up against Murray in the grand final rematch. Friday night football on 9. Unmissable rugby league this one. Penrith have won 19 straight at home. The Rabbitohs are hoping to knock them off. They've got Latrell back. They didn't have Latrell in the two classic finals games, including the grand final at the end of last year. The Panthers are going to be sweating, however, on James Fisher-Harris and Liam Martin, named in 19 and 24 respectively, but we know Nathan Cleary is back for Penrith. I cannot wait to call this game, Gus.
Yeah, well, it should be a beauty. As we said the other night, South Sydney and Penrith have met in big games over the last 2 years. The preliminary final in 2020 and the grand final, obviously, in 2021. A 4-point margin to the Panthers and a 2-point margin to the Panthers. And on both occasions, Latrell Mitchell was suspended. He didn't play in those big games. So there's a feeling within the South fans and the South ranks that he may have well been the one to make up the difference, and history could have been very, very different. I don't think so. I think the Panthers would have done enough in both games to win anyway, but they get a chance, South Sydney now, with Latrell, and off a really good win last weekend against the Roosters, to go out to Blue Bet and seek a little bit of revenge. You don't win premierships in March. I've always said that, but it'll be April by then, I guess. But but I think the Panthers will be too good at home. I can't see the winning run coming to an end just yet. I think it's a long time since we've only had one undefeated team in the NRL after 3 rounds. But the Panthers are showing no signs of slowing down. Last week they had a number of players out missing, just to show you the depth and the strength of the academy program and the pathways out there. not only did they win the first grade side and beat Newcastle, who were in good form, belted them, but their reserve grade won 40 points to 10 the next day too, with the TB young fellas too. So they're leading the competition undefeated in both grades.
Is Isaac Tago a Kiwi?
No, I think he's Australian born.
Right.
Well, he's obviously got Kiwi heritage or some sort of heritage there.
I'm only asking because you can throw him a test jumper if he is. Are you tipping Penrith even without Martin and Fisher-Harris?
Well, they're named on the bench, aren't they?
19 and 24.
Yeah, well, who says they're not playing?
I'm not. I'm wondering if they don't play, does that change your outlook?
No.
Okay. Warriors Broncos. This one's at Redcliffe.
Yep.
The home away from home for the New Zealand Warriors. Sean Johnson's on the extended bench.
Yep.
Kurt Cape was in a bit of doubt though. For the Broncos, Tom Flegler returns from suspension, and the Broncos are hoping to correct that. Very poor performance against North Queensland, and the Warriors.
Isaac Tago's nationality is Australian.
Oh, there you go.
Born April the 5th, so he's 19 years of age. He's a real talent, isn't he?
Is he? What?
Second row centre. He's from St Mary's.
St Mary's Junior.
He was very young when I was out there, but he's a great kid.
Oh, he's playing enormous.
But he's listed here as Australian.
Yep, okay. Yes, so Redcliffe gets a taste of NRL Rugby League. They've hosted a few games, Moreton Daily Stadium, the last couple of years, and this will be interesting.
Which game?
Warriors and Broncos. Just give me a tip. We don't have to go into that one.
Warriors win.
Okay, Johnson's on the extended bench. Now, Glen Willow Oval, the home of the male model from Mudgee, Ken Sutcliffe.
Yep.
Not the Oval, Mudgee.
Yep.
Doesn't live in the grandstand. Manly versus the Raiders. Manly just got squeaked home against your Bulldogs in the driving rain at Brookvale, and Canberra were dreadful in the first half against the Titans and untouchable in the second half.
Well, the second half showed the football of which they're capable. I mean, that's what we always think about when we look at the Raiders. They can go through tremendous periods in a game where they look, as you say, unstoppable. They look as though they could beat anyone in the competition, and every now and then they bob up and do it, but they're their own worst enemies at other times. And it was a game of two halves the other night. They were just terrible in the first half and turning the ball over, as they were the week before up in North Queensland, and North Queensland beat them pretty comfortably. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they get a roll on, they hold onto the ball, and they're just too strong for their opponents, and we were always going to finish over the top of them. Manly started to run into a little bit of form the other night, and I think that they'd much prefer to be playing this game at Brookvale or Four Pines Stadium, whatever they're calling it. The surface over there much improved. Beautiful surface, playing surface, and
New stand looks good.
New stand, great. Yeah, congratulations to all those concerned. But look, I'm going to select the Raiders to win this. Is that an outsider? That's an outsider. I think Raiders will beat Manly.
How big an outsider are they on Bluebet, by the way?
Don't know.
$2.75, is it?
I never look at the betting markets.
Don't you?
No.
Even though we're sponsored by a betting company.
I don't look at them. I don't bet on football, so I don't look at them.
All right, Canberra to win. Nick Kotrick is expected to return from a quad too. And look, they need a bit of reinforcement in the outside backs. Wonder if Jared Croker's going to come back into that team at some stage. He's been playing in the reserves. Now, don't look at the betting markets here. I just got a little feeling that you might tip an upset. Cowboys Roosters Townsville, 7:30 Saturday night. What have we got here? Pretty much same team for the Cowboys. The Roosters have got Fletcher Baker out, Saluka Fafita in, but the coach is not going to Townsville because of COVID.
Worrying signs for the Roosters the other night. Well, firstly, their first round performance was really poor, and then they bounced back the next week and got it done. And then last week, people keep pointing to the number of errors they made and the number of turnovers they made in the first half and how poorly they played in the first half. I actually thought they were worse in the second half, because in the second half, I've never seen Roosters defend like that. I've never seen them capitulate in defence like that, like they did against South Sydney. On the stats at half-time, there was real explanation why South Sydney were in front on the scoreboard, and the Roosters had done that to themselves. They'd created that damage with the amount of turnovers, an intercept try, all sorts of things went against them, but they were still close enough to win the game. And I just thought if they sort that out at half time, their possession and the way they're treating possession, even though South had dominated possession in the first half, South actually had more missed tackles than the Roosters at half time. So I thought, well, if the Roosters can just get 50% of the ball and treat it with respect, then those missed tackles for South Sydney will come out and they'll finish over the top of them and win. And it was completely the opposite. South Sydney continued on their great ball control, threw a fair bit at them, and the Roosters conceded some tries that I haven't seen them concede before. So they've got a lot of things to work out in that respect up there, and it's not handy not to have the head coach going up there, but they'll have able assistants that'll be able to handle it for them.
Hey, Gus, I asked Joey earlier.
It's a danger game.
Sorry, Joey earlier said to me in Fred in the 8th that he thinks that they're really struggling for big men up front, the Roosters in the middle.
Well, they've been starting Jarrett off the bench. I don't think that'll happen this week. They're going to have to get off to a good start. They're going to need him to do it. So, I don't know. I'm not going to second guess what they might do, team-wise and roster-wise, but I just can't believe how poorly they looked in defence in the second half. I haven't seen a Roosters team like that for a while. And when you looked at it, the last 3 times South Sydney had played them, they'd put 60, 50 and 40 on them. I mean, they'd given them a flogging every time. So South Sydney have obviously worked out the rough and tumble way to deal with the Roosters and caused them no end of trouble. So it's a danger game. It's a real danger game. I'm going to tip Rooster.
Oh. You just spent 2 minutes telling me why the Roosters can't win. You tipped them. You really led me down the garden path there. Storm versus Bulldogs, Sunday footy here on 9. Bulldogs defence has been good, Gus. Tackled really well. Is that a fair statement?
They're showing a lot of commitment. I think at this stage, with a new group the way they are, and given where they've come from, I mean, the Bulldogs have only won 6 games in the last 2 years. They had a horrific defensive record last year. I mean, it was really awful. So there's been a lot of resolve. All we've really asked for is, a bit of togetherness and a bit of commitment and a bit of courage and a bit of never give up attitude, and they've certainly delivered that. Starting to get a few injuries and be a few changes to the team this week, but they get the ultimate test now, don't they? They play, I think, the top 4 or 5 teams in the next 4 or 5 weeks, and they get a chance to play against the best and test themselves, and that's life in the NRL. Obviously, Storm will be heavily favoured this week, and I can't remember the last time they've lost 2 in a row at home, if ever. So they'll be stung by that Golden Point loss last week to Parramatta. And the week before they had a Golden Point win, so there's certainly been close games that they've been involved with. It's a Storm at home. They're hard to beat, aren't they?
Yep. Big task. Xavier Coates back, Harry Grant back as well, and poor Jack Hetherington. Sorry to hear about that. His season, unfortunately, is over. Same scenario too for poor old Ray Stone from Parramatta. How about that? Gets the kick bounce off the upright. Ray Stone's there, scores the try, wins the game, does his knee.
He's always a player I've admired. I can just I've had and known a lot of Ray Stones in my life. That are these blokes that they give 100% everything they do at training. They win everything. They do everything meticulous. They're not blessed with outstanding ability or skills, but they're a vital cog in your team and do a lot of work so that the champion players can do their stuff. You need those sort of players. Melbourne Storm have proved that over the years. You need those real workmen-like. And Ray Stone's always struck me as that. And I think he was one of the first players that Redcliffe signed. Mm-hmm. So a bloke like Wayne Bennett's recognised it too, that whilst you've got to go and buy stars and people who can score your points, you need those other blokes there that can make it happen for them too.
Especially building a team from scratch.
And for him to score both tries, I mean, the one you get the bomb and then the last one where he would have chased field goal attempts and kicks downfield 1,000 times in his career and no one would have noticed it. The number of times he would have chased field goal attempts and penalty goal attempts, he would have been first. He's kind of got that Ray Price mentality. How Ray Price used to stand under the post there and wait for I don't think a ball ever hit the post, but he used to wait for the rebound off the post. And Ray Stone's one of them blokes. He goes every time just in case he's needed. Every time. And you never notice it because he doesn't get the ball or it doesn't happen. But this time, and he pulled everyone's pants down. They said, oh, well, he must be offside. What's Ray Stone doing down there? When you went back to it, he was inch perfect.
Yep.
He waited for it, he meant it, he kicked it, he chased it as hard as he could, got it, scored the try, and unfortunately did his ACL, which was not hardly a reward, but I sense his rewards will come later in his career.
Well, that play might...
Wonderful.
You look back at the end of the season, that play might be the difference between making the 4 or not, or minor premiership or anything like that.
But and that's the mentality we try to build into players, and particularly Origin players, that you can go there 1,000 times, and not get any credit for it, not get a result, but we'll notice if you're not there, and we'll notice the one time that you are there that you were needed, and we just say go just in case.
Yep.
Just in case you need it. He was needed, and he picked it up and scored the winning try, and it was a great day for him.
Sterlo used to love, I'm sure he still does, Ray Stone. Now I know why, because he reminds him of Ray Price.
That's it. Yeah, every team needs players like that. He's one of those sort of blokes.
And we kick home round 4, Parramatta versus the Dragons, the old traditional rivalry. This one, Para coming off that buoyant win. Ryan Madison's back from a hamstring injury and joins the bench along with Bryce Cartwright. Matt Feeney has replaced Cody Ramsey on the wing, and Jack Gajeski is in for Jaden Sewer. Aaron Woods is back from a hamstring as well, so a couple of inclusions and a loss there for St George Illawarra. That game at Combank, 6:15 Sunday evening.
Now cast your mind back to early last year, around this time last season. Parramatta were sort of flying high and usually had their heads in the clouds, and the Dragons just went over there and bashed them.
They did too.
Beat them, flogged them.
Mm.
And I can see Dragons steeling themselves after the way they capitulated to the Sharks the other night. And the way they play their football, they want to be strong. I think that they'll physically get over there and put it to Parramatta. And if Parramatta are off their game, or thinking they're looking for an easy afternoon, or they're thinking that they just want to play a game of touch football, and they could be in for a real contest. This is a real danger game for Parramatta, coming back from beating the Melbourne Storm, the euphoria of everything that happened, dropping your guard, and a team like the Dragons just come over and hit you in the chin. Everyone's got a plan until you get hit on the chin.
Well, that's probably not the best terminology when you're talking about the Dragons, Gus. In fact, James Beaton, before we wrap up the podcast, on Ask Gus, hashtag Ask Gus, do the Dragons have a discipline problem?
Is that a yes, no, is it? Well, yeah. They've got to sort it out.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, James. All right, that rounds up 6 tackles with Gus for...
Well, they sail close to the win. That's what they do. That's their style of football. They're going to physically... Anyway.
Got to get out there and bash them. All right, that's 6 tackles with Gus for round 4. We'll be back next week. We'll also have our brand new podcast, 19 Holes with Gus, just in time for the Masters. I should mention, with all the Masters talk, it's here on Nine's Wild World of Sports.
Why don't we do our podcast on the golf course one day? I'll give you lessons on the golf course.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
About your skew-F putting and your short game. And
fixed it all.
That.
I'm ready to go. Fixed it all.
Have you?
Oh, yeah.
What are you playing off now?
6.
Very good.
Yeah. Can't get out. You know what? I've had one game of golf in 6 weeks because of this darn
flooded.
rain.
They're all flooded. It's terrible.
Doing my head in.
I'd kill for a game of golf.
Well,
I'd kill for a game
open
of
invitation.
Golf.
Open invitation.
I might see what Tiger's doing.
You mean Tiger. Okay.
If he doesn't play in the Masters, I'll invite him out to Camden Lakeside.
Yeah, sure, Gus. I love that track. Okay, goodbye.